Hello, everyone. My name is Michael Abdu, and I'm the account manager at OpenNebula Systems. And today I'm really excited that we have the opportunity to invite Thomas Bennett from MX. He's going to share some insight into how they're using OpenNebula at MX, what they're doing to take advantage of some of the key features to support their business. And we may even get some perspective on what type of enhancements they may be looking for in the future. So first, I want to thank you, Thomas, for joining us today. I'll hand things over to you.
Awesome. Thank you, Michael. It's very exciting to be here in this unique format, virtual presentation. I was just joking with Michael that this may be the first presentation I've given where I get to sit down the whole time. So this is a great opportunity. Grateful to be here. So like Michael said, I'm a platform engineer, a site reliability engineer, more specifically at MX. So who is MX? We're kind of behind the scenes. Our mission is to empower the world to be financially strong. And we do that through a number of different product lines, but it can really be boiled down to we're writing software and solutions for banks and credit unions and other financial technology companies and financial institutions. So we have millions and millions of end users. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if there's someone watching this presentation right now who has used an MX system, whether they knew it or not. One of our product lines that's easy to kind of explain and summarizes kind of what we do is on the right hand of the screen here. We write a white label mobile banking application. So when you go to your small credit union or your small local bank, they may not have the resources to write a full-fledged, cross-compatible, accessible mobile application. And so they'll come to us and buy our mobile app and put their logos and their colors and their themes on top of it. Really, it's an exciting place to work. We're based out of Salt Lake City, Utah, in the United States. And like I mentioned, we've got millions of customers millions of end users, I should say, end users who are leveraging our technology to improve their banking experience. So how does MX use OpenNebula? Well, we are a software as a service company. We have an online platform that's how we serve all of these millions and millions of users. Our platform runs in multiple independent data centers. Because of the nature of our business, we actually run our own data center. So we're not yet in the cloud, or in the public cloud, I should say. We're not yet in the public cloud. We're primarily inside of our own private data centers and co-location data centers. Our entire stack is virtualized, and it's virtualized on top of OpenNebula Enterprise. So we've been using OpenNebula for several years now. We started on the open source version. As our business grew, so did our needs. And we eventually did purchase the enterprise version of OpenNebula, which has been great for us. I've already mentioned we got multiple data centers. One thing that really drew us to OpenNebula is we're actually a Ruby shop primarily. And we heavily leverage the Ruby SDK that OpenNebula has released. We really like that OpenNebula primarily uses Ruby for a lot of its underlying functions. That's allowed us to kind of make tweaks and modifications and understand the code and have engineers who can really identify what's happening, under the hood. And I'll go into some examples here, but we've actually written a lot of our own custom Ansible modules to interface. We've actually written our own Puppet modules. We've written dozens and dozens of little Bash scripts and Python scripts, and really a lot of tooling around the OpenNebula product lines to enable us to scale, to enable us to redeploy if we had a catastrophic failure or disaster recovery, or a lot of the features that maybe weren't always present in OpenNebula when we first jumped on the bandwagon many years ago. I'm going to talk a little bit about how MX uses OpenNebula, and we'll go from there. So on the right is is a screenshot of one of our dashboards. This is from a little bit of an older version, but this is our one of our actual dashboards that we use. Okay, so I've got a couple code snippets here. I don't expect anyone to be reading the code necessarily, but I already mentioned that we're a Ruby shop primarily. This is an example of a pretty lengthy, this is just a small portion of a pretty lengthy Ruby script that we've written that ties into Ansible for instantiating new virtual machines. So what we're able to do is we're able to define a virtual machine in our own configuration management solution. And then we call this Ruby script via Ansible, and the Ruby script and Ansible go out and talk to the OpenNebula front-end server, which we internally often call the OpenNebula manager. So it'll go talk to the front-end server, and it will put in all of our requirements for the virtual machine. It'll put in the scheduling requirements. It'll put in the resource requirements. It'll put in our specific SSH keys that we want. And then it will actually instantiate that VM using a template. And it sends that out to the OpenNebula front end, which then will provision it onto one of our hundreds and hundreds of OpenNebula KVM hosts. So we're primarily leveraging KVM for our underlying virtual machines. We've dabbled in some of the other options that OpenNebula offers, but we've ultimately landed on KVM virtual machines. So this is just kind of a little bit of an example, without going too in depth, about some ways that we've really been able to leverage this OpenNebula SDK that they provide, and really how flexible it's been for us, that we've been able to extend it as needed. We've really been able to automate away a lot of the tasks that some users may just be doing in the user interface or the web interface. So one thing that's really key, and one thing I love about OpenNebula, is their excellent documentation. So we use a lot of these command line tools. Not only are we a Ruby shop, but we are very, very much a Linux shop, primarily using Ubuntu for the majority of our operating system, for the majority of our platform, I should say. And we leverage these CLI tools quite a bit. And I'll give some examples, but it's just been really great to see how the OpenNebula documentation be so complete, and the CLI tools be so functional and flexible as well. Okay, so here's a little bit of an example. This is kind of rudimentary, but on the right-hand side, we've got some custom metrics around our OpenNebula infrastructure. And these are built using those CLI tools and some automation that we've written. So the top row shows virtual machine migrations. The middle row shows virtual machine provisions or instantiations, basically creations of virtual machines. And then the bottom row shows decommissions, services and virtual machines that have been decommissioned for whatever reason, right? But this is actually kind of interesting because historically, we really didn't have any method of tracking exactly how many migrations were being performed every day or every month. And it's really interesting to see these metrics. And this is something that we've actually been able to take up our management chain and really say, hey, we need more headcount because look at how many provisions we've been doing. Look at how many migrations we've been doing. Like we've got a project to upgrade hardware, and that requires migrations, and we can really track those migrations in these metrics by leveraging these OpenNebula command line tools and this monitoring that we've written. We actually have some KPIs, some key performance indicators based around a lot of these metrics and these tools that we've written. So we now set goals based on, hey, we want to be able to provision a virtual machine in a certain amount of time after it's been requested. We still do the provisioning we still do the provisioning ourselves as the site reliability engineers team. That's primarily so that people don't abuse our systems. We're kind of a gatekeeper to prevent people from going and provisioning too many virtual machines. But anyways, that's beside the point. The point is that we've really been able to build these really cool metrics and automation using these OpenNebula tools. So here's another, this is very rudimentary. You might recognize the colors. This is just in Google Docs, right? In a Google spreadsheet, but it actually shows our virtual machine growth per data center over time. This is really interesting for capacity planning. We can take this again to our management team and say, hey, we've got just a growth or a shrinkage of virtual machines at any month or year or given time. And again, this is created using those OpenNebula command line interface tools, and then little wrapper scripts and some charts and data gathering around those. But this has been really interesting and helpful. And we were historically just kind of blind to like what is our growth rate from a virtual machine point of view. And again, virtually all of our platform runs on virtual machines. So from a hardware perspective, what kind of hardware do we need to purchase? How much? What data center should it be in? We've really been able to use this tooling that OpenNebula has provided to answer those questions. So here's a little script that I wrote. Don't look too closely because I can't vouch for how efficient this script is. But this is just a real world example of how we're leveraging these tools. I don't know if you can see we call the one cluster list command here. Further down, we call the one host list. In this case, we've built a report that will go out and figure out our disk usage for each data store in OpenNebula. Now, in our case, we actually have quite a few data stores. I know a lot of customers are using just one or two shared data stores. We're actually due to the nature of our architecture, we've actually got hundreds of data stores mounted into OpenNebula on various different hosts for different applications and whatnot. And so this is a script that will go out and show us exactly how much space is available on each data store, again leveraging these command line interface tools. So here's one. This is interesting to us. We primarily use Puppet for our configuration management solution, and we've actually gone out and written our own Puppet module that allows us to configure the OpenNebula front end and actually the OpenNebula KVM hosts, or what we might refer to as the backends as well. So we've got this one module that has a manager class, which is for the front end, and then it has a node class, which is for the hosts themselves. And what this has allowed us to do is really efficiently and automatically scale up our hosts and our front end as needed. So if we need to upgrade the underlying operating system of our front end, we may just redeploy it onto a new hardware using this class, and it will pull in all of our configs and all of our security requirements and all of our custom scripts. Similar with the KVM hosts, we're constantly cycling this hardware that's actually running our virtual machines, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. But by automating the provisioning of these KVM hosts and automating tying it into the OpenNebula front end, we've really been able to scale up and scale down our hosts as needed. So kind of cool. This is, again, just a very small snippet of a much larger Puppet module that we've written to automate a lot of this stuff. So how has it benefited MX? I do have a case study I wanted to kind of talk through. You see the screenshot on the right. These are virtual machine live migrations, and we've done thousands of these virtual machine live migrations. So we had our infrastructure team came to us. The infrastructure team is the ones who are in the data centers managing the actual physical hardware and network layer on a day-to-day basis. they came to us and said, hey, we've really got some old hardware that we need to retire and pull out of the data center. Problem is that it's running hundreds of these virtual machines that are critical to our platform. So what we were able to do is we were actually able to add additional hardware into our OpenNebula clusters, provision that hardware using these Puppet modules that I had talked about. So now we had a very large surplus of capacity in our OpenNebula hosts in the clusters themselves. At that point, we basically used the live migration feature that's built into OpenNebula, and we migrated all of our hosts all of our VMs off of this old antiquated hardware onto this brand new hardware, and then we're able to retire the very old hardware and hosts. This was completely seamless from our platform point of view. We were migrating VMs that were with running applications all over the place, and the application owners didn't notice, didn't have any idea. We didn't impact our end users. There's virtually zero blip in the platform, despite us migrating basically our entire platform over to completely new modern hardware. This may not, I don't believe this is actually officially supported, so they might not really appreciate me talking about this, but we actually migrated from Intel hosts onto AMD hosts, again, seamlessly. I don't think that's officially supported. We did our fair share of testing and our own kind of verification that this was going to work. But this was actually really critical for us. When we were doing this project was a few years ago, and it was when Intel was starting to kind of maybe fall a little bit behind, and AMD was really starting to take the lead in the CPU race wars, and it was very exciting. So we first converted all of our virtual machines into QEMU64 CPU types. And the QEMU64 CPU type is compatible on both Intel and AMD hosts. So then we were able to literally live migrate between CPU architectures and CPU manufacturers, which was really cool. We also dramatically increased the density of our virtual machines per KVM host. So when we were on Intel, this was older hardware. These were a little bit smaller boxes. We had maybe like 12 core CPUs in them, and we migrated them onto AMD Epics that had 64 core CPUs. So really cool that we were able to get that additional density, really just leveraging the OpenNebula tools. This was a huge win for MX to be able to do this hardware upgrade of the underlying hardware in our data centers without impacting our customers at all. And actually, since then, we've done this a number of times. We've actually upgraded, not just our compute, but also our network, our storage. We've been able to use these live migration features and a lot of this automation tooling that we've built to really upgrade our hardware at all different layers a number of times over the years. So very, very cool. That would have been very difficult without a tool like OpenNebula. This is actual footage of our infrastructure team after we took out this very old hardware. This was causing them quite a bit of grief as it was becoming more and more difficult to find replacement parts. And so anyways, a little bit of a fun video of how happy our infrastructure team was as we retired this old hardware using the live migration features. So future plans, we've been using OpenNebula before they really had tight integration into any observability stack. The more recent additions do have this tight integration, and that's something that we'd really like to leverage. I began the presentation by showing some of the charts and graphs that we've written internally, and I think going forward, we'd really like to leverage more and more of these native tools built into OpenNebula. So they now support Prometheus, they now support Grafana. I'd love to see that those are both tools that we have plans to support, and I'm really excited to see that ecosystem of supported tools grow over the coming years and coming versions. Other future plans, we're still running a little bit of an older version. It kind of comes back to that saying, don't fix what's not broken. We've got something that works really well for us, but we're definitely excited to get on the latest and greatest versions of OpenNebula. So for improvements, maybe after talking about this, they may not invite me back to speak again, but that's okay. I think it's good to get customer feedback. I just wanted to kind of tell you a little bit of a story about a few years ago when we upgraded to version 5.12, which at this point 5.12 is actually outdated and no longer supported. But when we upgraded to 5.12, they introduced this new feature called Marketplace. And Marketplace sounds really cool, right? You can go and download these community images, either from Docker Hub or from OpenNebula or from other locations. However, we here at MX, we're a secure financial platform, and we have to comply with a bunch of different financial compliance audits and financial rules, and a lot of, I don't know, red tape and security rules and whatnot about what we can and can't run on our platform. As soon as this marketplaces showed up, it started actually flagging in some of our security tools, and we started to see these show up in our logs. It was trying to reach out to Marketplace to pull down the latest images. And we're certainly not allowed to be pulling public images off the internet and running them on our production platform. And two, in a lot of cases, we're not even allowed to go reach out to the internet for these kinds of updates. This was, I don't want to blow it out of proportion or anything, but it was a little bit frustrating for us as a customer. At the time, we were trying to do the right thing, stay up to date on our OpenNebula installations, our OpenNebula clusters, and this one kind of came back to bite us a little bit. The good news is at this point we did have OpenNebula support, and we were able to engage with their support team and basically completely disable this marketplace feature that we didn't want and that was causing us a little bit of grief. So I completely recognize that some users, some customers, this may have been a really excellent feature. That wasn't necessarily the case for us. And I guess in terms of future improvements, we'd really love the ability to be able to turn. Well, I guess I should say, first of all, we'd love the ability for these new releases, some of these maybe edge case features to be disabled by default, so we're not caught unawares. But more than that, to be able to have these feature flags that you can turn on and off really, really easily, so we can get the features that we need and we can disable the features that we don't need to improve our security and our compliance. I think just kind of going forward with that, it seems like OpenNebula's had a really big push lately to kind of blur the line between what's on-prem and what's in cloud. This is another area where we're running on-prem, and we don't really have an immediate need to be running these in the cloud, nor a lot of our contract obligations prevent us from running in specific clouds. This is another case where a lot of the excellent features that OpenNebula has been developing over the last few months may not necessarily be applicable to us, and we'd really like the ability to turn those features on and off really, really easily. But with that, it's worth mentioning again that we're like incredibly dependent on this OpenNebula relationship, and it really does run our platform. And it's worth mentioning, or I don't know, it's definitely interesting to think that there may be some of you here in the audience today who've accessed an MX system, whether you've known it or not, and that has certainly flowed through this OpenNebula ecosystem. So with that, I think I'm coming close to the end of time here. But I just wanted to say thank you to Michael and the OpenNebula team for inviting me to come talk, and for really providing an excellent platform that we depend on and our business depends on a daily basis.
That's great. Thank you very much, Thomas. You offered us a lot here. This is great. I'm certain that our engineering team will certainly take a look at, what you pointed out here. I think regarding new features being disabled by default. I think you made a good case here as a practice. First, allow me to point out to the viewers, if you haven't done so already, please share any questions that you may have through the chat. But I just want to say again, Thomas, we really value being able to learn about how our customers and users are putting the software to use. And I'm sure that our viewers and our user community will agree. This has been really, really insightful. So once more, I just want to say thank you for taking the time to speak with us today.
Wonderful. Thank you.